Oh, sorry.
We have air conditioning, you see.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
There's a beaten up old fan in the window. It's silent at the moment. The fan is entrenched in the window frame. The fan might operate, but not in that way.
Knife?
Something about the shape of that knife gives Gabriel the creeps.
Yeah, right. I'd probably cut my own head off with that thing.
I wouldn't mind that.
Gabriel doesn't want anything to do with that knife. That must be Marie Laveau.
Totem pole?
An authentic-looking pole marks the center of the room. Authentic what? Gabriel isn't sure. The pole is solidly connected to the floor. An official voodoo wishing stump. Rub it and make a wish, a card says.
Funny, I say the same thing to women. I wish Malia Getty were mine forever. Really, I mean it.
What was that?
Oh, nothing.
Nothing at all.
Gabriel doesn't recognize the museum's flags. The back wall displays various voodoo items, such as offerings of fruits to the voodoo deities. Even if that were for sale, Gabriel couldn't afford it. A beaded gourd is on display.
Okay, a drum.
Large, elaborate drums occupy a corner of the museum.
Please, do not touch the drums. They are authentic.
Authentic what?
Drums. Do not touch them.
A very large, very formidable-looking snake is secured in a plexiglass cage.
The python is quite dangerous. I would stay back if I were you.
Ooh, it was alive.
Thanks for the advice.
The snake is too far away. Dr. John is a huge man. If his manner weren't so pleasant, he'd be intimidating. Given the man's size, that doesn't seem advisable.
Could I ask you a few questions?
That is why I am here.
Okay.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The killings in the newspaper. I know they have nothing to do with true voodoo in New Orleans.
What makes you think the voodoo murders aren't being done by local practitioners?
Voodoo is a popular boogeyman, Mr. Knight, especially in New Orleans. Anyone can pretend to use it, just as anyone can pretend to be a black belt in karate. And for the same reason, to intimidate. I know voodoo in this city, Mr. Knight, and believe me, it is not about killing. Even the police have stated that the killings have nothing to do with local voodoo.
Okay.
So you know nothing about the voodoo murders case?
I neither know nor care to know, Mr. Knight. My only possible interest is in how it might affect the public's attitude towards the museum. So far, it has not been an issue. No one has even had the bad taste to bring it up. Until you, that is.
New Orleans.
What do you think of New Orleans?
It is the only city in the United States, as far as I am concerned.
What is it about New Orleans that you so admire?
It has a real culture of its own, Mr. Knight. Amid the horrid blandness that is Americana, New Orleans alone has a voice.
Spoken like a true New Orleanian.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Ah, You have perhaps noticed the museum snake, Mr. Knight? They are beautiful creatures. Do you not agree? And the tourists seem to associate them with voodoo.
Okay. So,
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
okay.
Why did you open a voodoo museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us just say I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No, the museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
Okay, religious.
What are your own religious beliefs?
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
Anything?
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Just tell me anything.
I am a vegetarian.
Really? I can't imagine living without meat.
That must be the hunter in you, Mr. Knight.
Okay, anything
Just tell
again?
me anything.
I am not an easy person to get to know. I am a very private man.
Isn't that unusual for someone in the museum business?
Not at all. My displays speak for me.
Okay.
Just tell me anything.
Not everyone can come see the museum, so I occasionally do public speaking on the subject of historical voodoo.
Anything coming up that I might attend?
No, but then you have me all to yourself right now, do you not?
Yes. Nothing really.
Actually, I can't think of a thing.
Then let us discuss something else.
Chat.
So how's the museum business?
Those who truly seek to understand are few, Mr. Knight. But even one can be an audience.
Sounds about like my shop. So where do you pick up all this stuff?
Oh, here and there. We accept donations of any pertinent items.
Do you ever get any wackos in here?
You mean, besides yourself?
Yeah, besides me.
I do not care to make those kinds of judgments, Mr. Knight. All are welcome here.
You're a big guy, aren't you? You work out, play sports?
I do not play basketball, if that is what you want to know.
Who, me? No, you just look like such a natural athlete.
I do find ways of keeping fit, Mr. Knight. After all, our bodies are temples.
You sound like Grace. I should get the two of you together.
Is Grace your wife?
No, she just acts like it. So what do you think of our summer weather? Have you ever seen it so overcast or so muggy?
It is unpleasant. The heavens are not pleased these days.
Nice outfit.
I prefer simple cotton to dead flesh, Mr. Knight.
I'll have to remember that. This is quite a place you have here.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I have dedicated myself to the preservation of this unique culture. It is gratifying to see others reap the fruits I have sown.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Historical voodoo, or the voodoo currently practiced in the city.
Tell me about historical voodoo.
Very well. I will start at the beginning, Mr. Knight, and will go on from there at your prompting.
Sounds good.
As you may know, voodoo is a grassroots religion, formed by the mixing together of many different African tribal religions and Anglo religions, such as Catholicism or Protestantism. In other words, it is a religion born of the African slave trade. But African slaves were imported not only by the United States, but also into the West Indies, where the French and Spanish ran plantation islands. Prior to 1803, the New Orleans area was owned by France. The French Creole in those days owned many African slaves. But the Creole did not permit their slaves to gather, giving no chance for voodoo to breed here natively. The Creole also knew enough about the corrupted pagan practices of the West Indies slaves to ban the importings of slaves from that region.
Okay.
So how did voodoo come to New Orleans?
After the Louisiana Purchase, American legislators relaxed regulations. Slaves were permitted to gather. The Americans also removed the ban on West Indies slaves. Around the same time, a slave revolt occurred in Santo Domingo, what is now Haiti. Between the lifting of the ban and the Haitian Revolt, West Indies slaves began pouring into New Orleans. Some of them were free people of color, freed or escaped slaves. Some came with their white owners who were fleeing from the revolt.
What happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou St. John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons, at the place Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances, right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Okay, more.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, voodoo priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
Current voodoo.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or gree-gree. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo, the religion, has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in the religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I personally am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo, but it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
Okay.
Tell me about Marie Laveau.
There were actually two Marie Laveaux, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire.
Okay.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The Laveau tomb, where one or both of the Maries are believed to be buried, is in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. It is a popular shrine for practitioners and tourists alike. I myself take tours through the cemetery on a regular basis.
Really? Do you have any running this week?
No, but the cemetery is